late April to early May 1943, in an olive grove near Tunis, Tunisia, North Africa, Allied reconnaissance units found what intelligence officers later called the most valuable piece of information of the North African campaign. Tiger 7 and 12 was abandoned, intact, and still working. The huge German heavy tank sat quiet among gnarled olive trees. Its 88mm gun did not move. The crew had run away without destroying their vehicle. No explosives had been set. In the chaos of total military collapse, the Germans had left their most feared weapon for the Allies to capture completely. What would be learned from this 60-ton steel monster would be more useful than destroying a dozen Tigers in battle. The tank would show not only German engineering skill, but also a big strategic weakness that made even the strongest weapon weak on the battlefield. Not because of weak armor or too little firepower, but because it used huge amounts of fuel, so much that it made long campaigns hard to maintain. The North African campaign ended as a complete disaster for Axis forces. Between May 7th and May 13th, 1943, about 230,000 German and Italian soldiers surrendered in Tunisia. The entire Afrika Korps stopped existing as a fighting army. Among those who surrendered were survivors from Heavy Panzer Battalion 501, one of Germany's top armored units with Tiger tanks. Tigers had come to Tunisia starting in late November 1942. 3 Tigers from Heavy Panzer Battalion 501 reached Tunis on November 23, 1942, marking the first combat of German heavy tanks in North Africa. More Tigers came through December and January, eventually giving the battalion 20 working vehicles. The Tiger's fearsome reputation came before it arrived in Tunisia. Soviet forces on the Eastern Front had met these giant tanks in January 1943 near Leningrad. Red Army reports described vehicles that could destroy T-34 medium tanks from more than 2,000 meters away. The Tigers carried the famous 88 BT gun, taken from Germany's powerful anti-aircraft weapon and changed for use against tanks. This gun could go through the front armor of any Allied tank at distances where the tank could not fire back. American forces first heard about German super-heavy tanks in early February 1943 from British sources. The descriptions sounded exaggerated to soldiers who were used to fighting Panzer III and Panzer IV medium tanks. Intelligence reports described a tank weighing over 55 tons with 100 millimeters of frontal armor and a main gun that could destroy Allied tanks from over 2 kilometers away. Many American tankers thought these reports were British exaggeration or propaganda. The reality was even worse than the warnings. On February 14, 1943, German forces launched Operation Flaxing Wind, attacking American positions at Heavy Pass in central Tunisia. Parts of the 21st Panzer Division, reinforced with Tigers from Heavy Panzer Battalion 501, struck Combat Command A of the United States 1st Armored Division. The Battle of City Build on February 14th and 15th clearly showed Tiger superiority. Combat Command C of the 1st Armored Division counterattacked on February 15th with 52 Sherman medium tanks. German forces had placed anti-tank guns in a classic ambush with Tigers supporting from long range. By the time Combat Command C pulled back, 46 of 52 Sherman tanks had been destroyed or disabled. A survey of the battlefield 3 weeks later showed important information about the Tiger threat. They mapped the destroyed American tanks and figured out what weapons had destroyed them. Surprisingly, only 1 Sherman had been hit by an 88mm round, either from a Tiger or a towed 88mm anti-tank gun. Most American tanks had been destroyed by 50mm guns from Panzer IIIs or 75mm guns from Panzer IVs. The survey showed that Tigers were not very many in number, but their psychological effect was much stronger than their actual presence. The Battle of Kasserine Pass, starting February 19, 1943, gave American soldiers their first large fight against experienced German armor. Tigers took part in the attack, though only in small numbers. American Sherman tanks with 75mm guns had to get within 300 meters to have any chance of hitting Tigers from the sides or back. Tigers could fire and hit targets from 2,000 meters with almost no risk from a frontal attack. The psychological effect on American tank crews was very strong. Army medical officers wrote about what they called tiger phobia among tankers who had seen the German heavy tanks. Even hearing that Tigers were in an area would make American units ask for air support and artillery before moving forward. This fear made the Tiger more powerful than its small numbers should have allowed. By March 1943, special training materials had to be made to help American armored units deal with tiger phobia. Intelligence reports said Tigers were rare, had weaknesses, and could be beaten with the right tactics. But the training could not give much real advice for Sherman crews fighting Tigers directly, except to call for artillery or air help. In the last weeks of the Tunisian campaign in April and early May 1943, another Tiger weakness became clear. Mechanical breakdowns, lack of spare parts, and fuel problems stopped more Tigers than Allied attacks did. Heavy Panzer Battalion 501 had come to Tunisia with 20 Tigers and 16 Panzer III support tanks. By the end of April, only a few were still working. The rest were left behind or destroyed by their own crews as German forces fell apart. The battalion's war diary, captured by the British and later shared with American intelligence, showed the worsening situation week by week. Entries from December 1942 said all 20 Tigers were working at arrival. By December 28th, only 14 were still operational and 8 were being repaired. Spare parts were not available. Fuel was irregular and not enough for long operations. By January 30th, 1943, only 11 Tigers worked. The diary said fuel shortages were becoming very serious, since each Tiger needed constant fuel, oil, and spare parts, which German supply lines in North Africa could not give reliably. Entries in March reported only 6 Tigers were working. The rest were out of action because of mechanical problems or lack of fuel. Requests for spare engines were denied, with headquarters saying no engines were available anywhere in the region. The entry for April 20th showed desperation. Allied attacks were breaking through all German lines. Orders were given to retreat, but fuel was only enough for a little movement. Many Tigers had to be left behind. Demolition teams were too busy and could not destroy all the equipment. Some vehicles would end up in enemy hands still working. Tiger 712 never got any demolition charges. Its crew, facing heavy Allied attacks and almost out of fuel, left the tank in an olive grove near Tunis. Whether they expected demolition teams to reach it or just ran away to survive is unknown. The chaos of total military collapse left many such questions unanswered. Lieutenant Sue of the 104th Tank Workshop, Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, wrote about finding Tiger 7-12 on June 9, 1943. His report said the tank was working and intact in an olive grove with other abandoned German vehicles, including at least 2 more Tigers and a Panzer III. The grove looked like a field workshop with one Tiger's engine covers removed. Demolition had destroyed one Tiger completely, but Tiger 7-12 was untouched. Finding it excited Allied intelligence teams. Colonel George B. Jarrett, chief of the Foreign Material Branch at Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, was told that American forces had secured a complete Tiger. This was an amazing chance to learn about the tank. For months, Allied forces had fought Tigers without fully knowing their power or weaknesses. Now they had one to examine, measure, test, and study in detail. The recovery operation showed the Tiger's huge size and weight. Tiger 7-12 weighed 56.9 tons in combat form. American M31 tank recovery vehicles were made to recover 30-ton Sherman tanks. Moving the Tiger needed several recovery vehicles working together, plus bulldozers and special heavy equipment. The convoy taking Tiger 7-12 from the capture site to Tunis port mostly moved at night to avoid any German air attacks, though by May 1943, German air power over Tunisia was almost gone. Engineers had to check every bridge to make sure it could hold the weight. Some roads could not carry the Tiger and its transport trailer together. What normally took 4 hours took 3 days to complete. At Tunis port, loading the Tiger onto a ship was another big engineering problem. The combined weight of the tank and shipping cradle was more than 65 tons, so they needed heavy lift cranes rated for at least 70 tons. Port engineers found the right equipment and loaded Tiger 7012 onto the Liberty ship SS Samuel P. Bush for the Atlantic trip. The voyage took about 3 weeks, and the ship arrived at Norfolk, Virginia in early July 1943. From Norfolk, Tiger 7112 traveled on a special reinforced flatbed rail car to Aberdeen Proving Ground in Maryland, arriving in mid-July 1943. Aberdeen Proving Ground was the U.S. Army's main testing and evaluation center for weapons and armored vehicles. Engineers and intelligence officers had been getting ready for months, studying captured German technical manuals, translating operating documents, and gathering battlefield reports. Brigadier General Gladian M. Barnes, Chief of Research and Development for Army Ordnance, sent clear instructions to the Aberdeen testing teams. The captured Tiger was an amazing chance to study the enemy's most dangerous tank in detail. Testing would be thorough, covering armor strength, gun performance, mechanical reliability, mobility, and, very importantly, logistics like fuel use and operational range. The first inspection showed advanced German engineering. The Tiger had interleaved road wheels with torsion bar suspension, giving excellent weight distribution and off-road performance. The Maybach Olvar transmission had 8 forward gears and 4 reverse gears, letting the Tiger move backward as fast as forward, which was very useful in defensive fighting. The famous 88 Boipe TBTBBDM Quike 36 L56 gun could fire armor-piercing rounds at more than 900 meters per second with very high accuracy. The Tiger's armor impressed American engineers. The front hull armor was 100 mm thick, the front turret armor also 100 mm, and the gun mantlet ranged from 120 to 200 mm. Side hull plates were 60 mm, with side superstructure armor at 80 mm. This armor made the Tiger almost immune to most Allied anti-tank weapons when attacked from the front. But Aberdeen engineers found something in the German technical specifications that needed their immediate attention. Fuel capacity and how much the Tiger used caused serious questions about how long it could fight. The tank carried 532 and 32 liters of fuel, about 140 U.S. gallons, in 4 fuel tanks in the back. The Maybach HL230 12-cylinder engine made 690 horsepower. That was a lot of power, but just barely enough for the Tiger's 56.9-ton weight. German operating documents captured with the tank said the Tiger could travel 195 kilometers on roads in perfect conditions, about 121 miles. Off-road range was 110 km, about 68 miles. These numbers worried American engineers, who knew how far Shermans could go. Even considering the Tiger's bigger weight, the range seemed very short. Testing at Aberdeen went from July 1943 through January 1944, 6 months of close study of every part of the Tiger's performance. Fuel use tests were the most important because it affected how the tank could fight. American military rules required tanks to move far into enemy territory, sometimes hundreds of miles from supply bases. A tank with a short range caused big problems, no matter how powerful it was in battle. Tests on paved roads at steady speed confirmed the German numbers. Tiger 712 used about 195 liters per 100 kiloton roads, roughly 1.2 gallons per mile. That gave a maximum range of about 117 miles with full fuel, close to the German claim of 121 miles. But off-road testing showed much worse fuel use. Aberdeen's rough terrain course had hills, mud, sand, water, and obstacles to copy combat conditions. Test runs over 32 sound titles to 2 miles, with frequent speed changes used to 132 gallons, leaving only 8 gallons from the original 140 gallons. That meant 4,125 gallons per mile, cutting range to about 34 miles under real conditions. Combat simulation tests gave even worse numbers. When crews did realistic combat work, like fast starts and stops, many direction changes, turning the turret, long idling for observation, and lots of radio use. Fuel use reached 6.1 gallons per mile. Under these real combat conditions, the operational range fell to about 23 miles before running out of fuel. The test results showed a serious strategic problem. The Tiger tank was very powerful in direct combat, but it could not fight for a long time far from supply lines. Its huge fuel use needed constant refueling in amounts that would overwhelm any logistics system. In battle, a Tiger battalion would need huge fuel deliveries just to stay mobile. Aberdeen engineers calculated the fuel needs. Each Tiger in active combat used about 500 to 2,000 gallons of fuel per week. A battalion of 20 Tigers needed 30,000 to 40,000 gallons every week just for the Tigers, not counting support vehicles, half-tracks, trucks, reconnaissance vehicles, and other equipment needed for battalion operations. By comparison, American intelligence gathered fuel data for Sherman units. A typical American tank battalion with 53 Sherman tanks used about 65,000 gallons per week, including all vehicles. German heavy tank battalions with only 20 Tigers used almost the same fuel for less than half the number of tanks. When support vehicles were counted, German heavy tank battalions actually used more total fuel than American medium tank battalions, even though they had less than 40% as many tanks. Colonel Barnes put Aberdeen test data into secret reports sent to all Army Armor Commands in October 1943. The reports said Tiger tanks were very powerful, with armor stronger than any Allied tank and guns effective beyond 2,000 meters. But a serious weakness was clear. Fuel use limited the Tiger's range to about 120 miles on ideal roads and only 30 to 40 miles in real combat conditions. German logistics had to supply fuel constantly, or Tigers would stop moving. Tigers that could not move could not fight. The reports suggested that one of the best ways to stop Tigers was to attack their fuel supply lines. Intelligence officers compared Aberdeen test data with captured German supply documents, showing how hard it was for Germany to keep Tigers running. The analysis showed that in 1943 and 1944, German logistics could barely meet Tiger fuel needs, even in good conditions. With Allied air forces destroying supply lines, fuel shortages would naturally reduce Tiger effectiveness. The Tiger's huge fuel use explained strange operational patterns that Allied intelligence had noticed in 1943. German heavy tank battalions usually stayed only 30 to 40 kilometers from supply bases. Tigers avoided long movements when they could, and often stayed in static defensive positions instead of chasing defeated enemies. This was not just a choice, but a necessity because of limited range. Captured German unit war diaries from different fronts confirmed this. The heavy SS Panzer Battalion 101 war diary from Normandy in summer 1944 showed repeated fuel shortages. The July 8th entry reported excellent combat results, with 16 Sherman tanks and 3 Cromwell tanks destroyed for the loss of 1 Tiger due to mechanical failure. But fuel ran out after 4 hours of fighting. The battalion could not move and had to wait for fuel trucks while Allied forces pulled back. Chasing the enemy was impossible because of fuel shortages. The July 20th entry said fuel was cut by 40%, with strict orders to conserve it. Tigers were limited to defensive positions and could not attack until fuel improved. The diary said the best tanks in Europe were sitting idle because there was no fuel. On August 6th, 3 Tigers were abandoned while withdrawing from the Falaise pocket. They were mechanically fine, but had empty fuel tanks with no fuel available. Demolition charges were set, but crews were not sure if they worked. Crews had to leave on foot. British intelligence shared captured documents showing the same problems on other fronts. Heavy Panzer Battalion 503 records from Italy showed Tigers often stopped because of fuel shortages. 5th SS Panzer Division wicking records from the Eastern Front told the same story. Tigers could fight well, but fuel shortages stopped them from staying effective. Everywhere Tigers were used, fuel shortages limited their power. American intelligence sent tactical guidance based on Aberdeen findings to all combat units by November 1943. The guidance said that when units met Tigers, they should avoid fighting them head-on if possible. Instead, they should move to make Tigers reposition. Every mile a Tiger moves used a lot of fuel. Moving a lot quickly used up their fuel fast. Tigers that ran out of fuel could be bypassed or destroyed with artillery or air support instead of risking direct tank battles. Training films made in late 1943 included fuel use findings. One film, called Understanding German Heavy Tanks, clearly explained that a Tiger used about 3 to 6 gallons of fuel per mile, depending on the terrain and combat situation. Sherman tanks used less than 1 gallon per mile in most cases. This meant American tanks could move 5 to 6 times farther on the same fuel. Crews were told to use this advantage by making Tigers chase American formations, burning German fuel, then attack when Tigers could not move well. The Normandy campaign in summer 1944 proved the Aberdeen analysis was correct. As Allied forces broke out from beachhead positions in July and August, German armor units could not move. Heavy Panzer battalions with Tigers and Panthers were stuck, not because of battle damage, but because of empty fuel tanks. American armored divisions advanced 130 miles in 7 days during the breakout. Tigers could not keep up, even with full fuel. Their real combat range of 30 to 40 miles meant they could barely move between defensive positions, let alone operate across the battlefield. The liberation of France in August and September 1944 showed Tiger fuel problems clearly. Recon units found dozens of abandoned Tigers and Panthers along German retreat routes. Most had no major battle damage. All had empty fuel tanks. German crews destroyed what they could, but often there was not even enough fuel to demolish the tanks properly. Operational tanks were just left behind when fuel ran out. The Ardennes offensive in December 1944 showed the fuel crisis even more clearly. German forces launched their last big Western attack with strict fuel rationing. Each panzer division got enough fuel to move about 150 kilometers, assuming they could capture Allied fuel dumps to refill. The plan failed completely. American forces held or destroyed fuel dumps, and German armor stopped all over Belgium as fuel ran out. Kampfgruppe Peiper, the lead of the 6th Panzer Army offensive, advanced 60 kilometers before fuel exhaustion stopped all movement. The battle group included Tigers from the 1st SS Panzer Division. Soldiers at Stumen and Ytre reported Tigers along roadsides, stopped by empty fuel tanks rather than battle damage. Major Hal D. McCoe, an American officer captured by Kampfgruppe Peiper who later escaped, said that German officers openly discussed the fuel problem. They desperately needed to capture American fuel dumps. When the Americans held the dumps, the German attack collapsed. McCow saw Tiger crews frantically siphoning fuel from broken vehicles, trying to get at least some Tigers moving. The fuel crisis was total. German records captured after the war showed that fuel shortages controlled German planning from 1943 onward. Each Tiger used about 300,000 gallons of fuel over its average service life. That same fuel could run 7 Panther tanks or 18 Panzer IV tanks. Germany chose concentrated firepower over widespread capability and paid the price in operational paralysis when fuel ran out. The final American assessment, prepared by Army Ordnance in March 1945, concluded that the Tiger heavy tank was excellent in individual combat, but a disaster in logistics. Fuel use of about 1.2 gallons per mile on roads, rising to 3 to 6 gallons per mile in combat, made the Tiger unsustainable for long campaigns. German industry could build these tanks, and German crews could operate them well, but German logistics could not supply fuel. especially under constant Allied air attacks on supply lines. After the war, Allied forces questioned captured German tank designers and engineers. Henschel engineers who made the Tiger admitted that fuel use concerns came up during design. But military leaders overruled them, demanding maximum armor and firepower. Erwin Aders, a senior engineer at Henschel, told Allied interrogators in May 1945 that engineers had calculated during the Tiger's design phase, engineers calculated that fuel use would limit the tank's range to about 120 kilometers on roads, and much less in combat. This was reported to vehicle procurement officers who knew the limit, but said the Tiger's combat power would allow fast victories before fuel became a problem. History proved them wrong. Dr. Ferdinand Porsche, whose Tiger design lost to Henschel's version, testified that both designs used too much fuel. His design had a gasoline-electric drive, which used even more fuel than Henschel's mechanical transmission. Engineers knew that no heavy tank weighing 55 to 60 tons could have acceptable fuel economy with 1942 technology. But military leaders wanted the heaviest armor and most powerful gun, no matter the supply problems. The result was a tank that could win any individual battle but could not keep fighting in long campaigns. The Tiger's fuel use became a key lesson in post-war military education. The U.S. Army Command and General Staff College used it a lot in logistics courses to show a basic principle. A weapon that cannot be kept supplied is not effective, no matter how good it is in battle. The Tiger tank, despite being feared and very powerful in combat, proved this principle across European battlefields many times. Strong performance without supply sustainability equals strategic failure. Tiger 712 stayed at Aberdeen Proving Ground as a training example until 1989. 46 years as a reminder of how important logistics are in armored warfare. The tank that scared Allied crews in 1943 became a classroom tool, teaching the connection between combat power and supply. Many generations of American armor officers studied it, learning how to balance firepower, protection, and mobility with sustainable logistics. In 1989, Tiger 712 was loaned to Germany for restoration and display. It eventually returned to the United States. Today, Tiger 712 is at Fort Moore, Georgia, formerly Fort Benning, as part of the U.S. Army Armor and Cavalry Collection. The left side of the hull and turret is cut open so students can see the inside parts. It stands as both a monument and a teaching tool, showing German engineering skill that ignored practical supply limits. Capturing and testing. Tiger 712 gave intelligence that shaped Allied tank tactics for the rest of World War II. American tank crews learned that the Tiger had a weakness more important than any flaw in its armor. It used fuel so fast that it could not move long distances when Allied air attacks and attacks on supply lines were active. Knowing this weakness let Allied forces make tactics that neutralized Tiger advantages without needing tanks as heavily armed or armored. Learning about Tiger fuel use influenced American tank design for decades after the war. The M48 Patton tank, developed in the 1950s, got more than 1 mile per gallon even though it weighed 47 tons and had a powerful 90mm gun. American engineers understood that mobility depends on fuel efficiency, and that good fuel efficiency requires careful engineering balancing many needs. Lessons from Tiger 7-12 made operational range a key design factor for all later American armored vehicles. Modern main battle tanks continue this balance of firepower, protection, and mobility with sustainable logistics. The M1 Abrams tank, introduced in 1980, carries over 500 gallons of fuel and gets about 6 miles per gallon, letting it travel more than 300 miles on roads. Even though the Abrams weighs 70 tons and has a gas turbine engine, it has enough range for deep strikes and mobile operations. Designers made sure even the most powerful tanks can go far and keep moving in battle. The story of Tiger 712 teaches an important lesson about military technology. Powerful weapons need good logistics to work in real battles. The strongest tank in the world is useless if it stops moving while waiting for fuel that never comes. German engineers made the Tiger a tactical masterpiece, but German logistics could not support it for long operations against enemies who controlled the skies and destroyed supply lines. Allied forces used this weakness very effectively. Colonel George B. Jarrett, who oversaw all captured German equipment testing during and after the war, summed it up in June 1945. His report covered 3 years of testing and analysis. The German Tiger tank did everything its designers promised in battle. It had strong armor, deadly long-range firepower, and good crew protection. But it failed strategically because it broke a basic military rule. Weapons must be sustainable in long combat. The Tiger used too much fuel, was mechanically complex, and required enormous logistics, making it impossible to keep operating in prolonged battles. Germany built an army around weapons it could not support properly. The Tiger shows this failure clearly. Brilliant tactical power cannot make up for poor logistics. The Tiger proved this again and again in thousands of burned and abandoned tanks across Europe, from Tunisia to Berlin. Tiger 712 now sits in climate-controlled storage at Fort Moore, Georgia. Its 88mm gun will never fire again. The Maybach engine that drank fuel so fast will never run again. The engine will never run again. But the lessons it taught are still important in every armor school, every logistics course, and every staff college studying modern mechanized warfare. The principles are timeless and universal. The tank that scared Allied crews in 1943 became a teacher that shaped modern armored tactics, not because of its strengths, but because of its biggest weakness. The Tiger could win any single battle with its strong gun and armor, but it could not reach far battlefields, could not fight for long far from supply bases, and could not survive fuel shortages caused by Allied air attacks and supply targeting. A tank that travels only 120 miles on a full tank on roads and only 30 miles in combat cannot win wars across continents. Germany learned this the hard way, with thousands of abandoned Tigers from North Africa to Normandy to the Ardennes to Berlin. America learned it by testing Tiger 7-12 and built tanks that valued operational sustainability as much as combat power. In mechanized warfare, the side that can keep moving over distance and time wins. The Tiger forgot that rule. History never forgave the mistake. Capturing and testing Tiger 712 showed Allied forces clearly that firepower means nothing without fuel to reach the fight. Armor protection means nothing without mobility to use it. The best tank in the world is useless without the logistics to keep it moving in long campaigns under enemy air attack. Tiger 712 today is both a monument and a teacher. A monument to German engineering that ignored supply limits and strategic reality. A teacher showing that warfare needs sustainable systems, not just powerful weapons. The strongest weapon becomes a heavy, immobile sculpture if it cannot move to the next battle. The Tiger proved that lesson again and again across Europe. Americans who captured and tested it learned the lesson completely and built it into their doctrine. Modern armored forces still remember it. The 60-ton steel beast that once terrified battlefields now quietly teaches in a Georgia museum. Its greatest contribution to military history was not the enemy tanks it destroyed, but the understanding it gave about the connection between tactical skill and strategic sustainability. That is the complete story of Tiger 712, the most dangerous tank in the world, ultimately defeated not by enemy weapons, but by its own huge hunger for fuel that German logistics could never supply.